What's going on, friends? It's Sean Pierce Johnson here, and welcome to this week's episode of Stomp Box Saturday. Today, we're going to be focusing on the clean pedal from Chase Bliss. If you've seen any of my other videos related to Chase Bliss pedals over the years, you know my great affinity for this company and the sounds that they are able to produce. And it continues in one of the most basic of guitar effects, compression. They have done something very special here with the clean pedal, because not only is this great at doing the subtle thing, but it takes compression into completely new territories that really, it would take people like the people at Chase Bliss to come up with the ideas that are inside this thing. And I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that this might be the most advanced compressor pedal out on the market today. Now, this is the point of videos where I usually say, let's take a look at the controls and explain what they do. However, I think the best place to start is to hear a couple different sample settings, and then we'll come back to showing you what exactly I'm doing to get these sounds. Now that you've heard clean as just a compressor, let's take a look at the controls in a bit more depth. What's great is that all the knobs that you see on the pedal, in and of itself, just work with the compressor. They all do something for that particular effect. And thankfully they're color coded, so we kind of get a little bit better of an idea of what exactly they're affecting. All the green controls are going to be affecting the compression that the pedal is generating. So in the top row, we have dynamics and sensitivity. Dynamics is gonna set the a ratio of compression that as you start going further on the knob's throw, you get into things like feedback and feed forward limiting, and all the way at the extreme, it's kind of tubes like sag. Then sensitivity can kind of be thought of as the threshold of the compression effect. Kind of sets the point where that effect is gonna start kicking in. Then we have the attack knob, which is variable. We can set the quickness of how the compression effect starts coming in with our playing. And then we have the EQ. In one direction, the counterclockwise direction, it starts shaving off high end, so it makes it a bit darker. And then in the higher end, towards the clockwise, it starts shaving off lows, makes things a little bit brighter. Then we have the two blue knobs. Now the two blue knobs are dry and wet. So we not only have a compressed signal level control, we also have an uncompressed signal level control. So we effectively have a parallel compression pedal. And this comes in really handy, and I'll show you how in a little bit. So let's start exploring those things. First, I'm going to plug in my Fender Ampro 2 Strat with my HSS Lawlers in. I'm just gonna go at position 2 for the bridge, and the middle position for that quacky Strat thing works great with compressors. And I'm going to show you the extremity of the effect produced by the dynamic control. We're gonna pick one unity gain setting on the wet knob. We're gonna turn the drive all the way down and then set a sensitivity, and I'm just gonna sweep that dynamics control. We'll do some stabs, we'll do some basic strumming, some single note stuff, keep it a bit funky and kind of busy so that we get in a sense of just what exactly the pedal is doing. But first, let's hear the clean tone, which is coming from my Walrus Audio Mako ACS1. Now, some of you are gonna listen to that and think that's a very extreme EQ sweep, and it is. I'm not gonna lie to you, but this is a good spot for us to highlight the dry control and how great it is to have a wet and dry control for parallel compression sounds. Let me give you the perfect example of this. First, just a straight compressed sound. I'm not using any of the dry signal, and it's for a very specific reason. I'm cutting out a lot of lows because I'm gonna pair this with some fairly wet ambient effects. I have the Keeley Halo running the Halo dual echo setting, and the New Neighbor Immerse Mark II in the wet reverb mode. Combining those two together with none of the compression coming off of clean, this thing sounds like this. There's a whole lot of audio frequencies getting in the way of really helping those effects to really pop through. By using the compression on clean and filtering out some of those low end frequencies, we can let those ambient effects start to fill that space of the sound spectrum that the low frequencies would be taking up. You can feel that those lower frequencies start to muddy up that really lush reverb that we get. So just being able to brighten things up considerably to help those ambient effects poke through is really great. Or say you have a nice mildly crunchy sound that you like when you really grab onto those big old bends. That's a great sound, but you want to throw some compression on just to add a little bit more extra excitement to it. Clean does great with that, but if we turn back this dry control, just listen to what it can do to that already good sound, but it takes away some of the magic. It thins it out quite a bit. The dry signal, by adding in some of our original guitar sound, can bring some of that fatness back without us affecting the compression that's going on, which I like. So let's just pump it back up to where we had it. Get that nice hefty compression, some of that body comes back, but we can keep that brightness that we got from the EQ circuit. Of course, we can also darken it if we want. Let's just have a little fun and see what happens with the polar opposite. Now, the attack and release of Clean's compression is controlled by two things. First, the attack knob, and then the release toggle switch. Now, what is great is that the attack is variable from the outset. The knob is labeled like that, and you can have it be very, very quick or very, very long, depending on whatever kind of compression sound it is that you're going for. But the release has a three-way toggle switch. In the left position, it's a fast release. In the right position, it's a very long release, and in the center, it's user release. Well, how does the user set the release time? Well, that's a hidden option, which you access by pressing and holding down on both foot switches, like so, and then turning the attack control. So if you want to set an attack and a release time that you prefer, you can go ahead and do it. But let's just check out the preset ones really quick. Now, when it comes to attack and release, you're really gonna wanna set these depending upon what kind of music you're playing. Genres like funk may want faster attack with a slower release, but I do know guys who like very fast reacting compressors that pretty much catch anything and everything. But if you're playing something more like rock, you might want to slow down the attack because your chords are strummed a bit less than they would be in funk. Ultimately, it all just comes down to the sound that you're looking for and what suits the musical moment best. Now, the last control that we should take a look at is sensitivity, because in and of itself, this is going to overall set the extremity of the compression effect. To really drive it home, let's go ahead and turn the dynamic up pretty quickly. Let's get it into that limiting territory. Now from here, let's go ahead and turn the sensitivity control up all the way. And then slowly as we play, let's turn that back and just sort of hear how the compression changes as the sensitivity is decreased. Remember, the sensitivity is going to be the point where the compression effect starts kicking in. So the lower we go, the harder we're gonna have to make the compressor work in order to do its job. See, at that point, the compression is really not coming in. Maybe if we quicken the attack a little bit. You could see that the LED above the aux foot switch started blinking once we lowered the attack control. That means that everything that's coming into the compressor is getting the effect applied to it. But there you go. I don't think there's any better way to show you just how effective the sensitivity control can be. And sometimes even subtle movements of it will make drastic changes. So just remember, with this and any other compressor really, always just listen. Don't worry about the knob position. Wherever they are will definitely surprise you. Just go for the sound that you hear in your head and that you want so you can make music. So we've gone over pretty much everything you need to know about Clean in order to take advantage of it as solely a compressor. But now we can start diving into some of the things about Clean that make it a lot more fun than just a straight up compressor. The mode toggle is very interesting. It is connected to the EQ control on clean. And basically, this sets the way that the EQ behaves within the circuit. In the center position, it's your run-of-the-mill, well, as run-of-the-mill as Chase Bliss gets, EQ control. It's exactly what we've been experiencing so far. When we turn it to the right, get that right position going, this modulates that filter that's in EQ. And we can kind of turn this compressor pedal into a modulation, which is pretty darn awesome, as a dynamically controlled tremolo of sorts, which is really fun, and you just heard. Basically what happens here is the EQ sets the center point that's going to be modulated, and the attack control becomes the speed of that modulation, and it can get really squirrely. If I just strum one chord, that's about where I like to leave it all the time, but let me just go ahead and turn off the delay and reverb. Let's turn the attack knob up all the way because it can't hurt. Do you hear that weird little happening underneath our playing? Let's turn the dry down. I'll crank the wet. That's the modulating frequency going, it's like a really fast flutter. Now I'll slowly turn back that attack control. Then basically it starts fading out as you stop playing, which is connected to the release time. I have it on a pretty fast release for that very specific purpose of being able to dynamically control it. So if we go back to our initial setting with some dry signal in it, now when we throw the mode toggle into the left position, it's almost like it becomes an auto filter effect. It essentially goes from where you set the knob to full frequency once your signal passes the point of sensitivity. So let's go ahead and just experiment right now in real time, trying to find some kind of auto filter sound that we can have some fun with. Now, 9 times out of 10, I'm just using the EQ for what it is. It's a tone shaper. But the fact that it's there means that clean is far more than just a single-use pedal. And anytime you're on a gig where you need some tremolo and you don't have a tremolo pedal, but you got clean on your board, whoever's asking you for that tremolo effect, you can dial in something relatively close, and they'll be giving you all the props for the rest of the gig. We've addressed 2 out of the 3 toggle switches on clean already. The one we haven't touched is physics. Now, what exactly is physics? Well, it essentially is a way of affecting the envelope of clean's compression engine. And it essentially introduces some sort of interruptions. It says it models the mechanics of a spring. So if you think about striking a chord on your guitar into a spring reverb, that kind of flapping that goes along, that's a fun word, flapping. That's basically what we got going on. Now, by itself, the effect is kind of, it's fun, but it's not something that I would do all the time. However, there is a way that I would use it. I'll show you that in a little bit, but let's take a listen to both the more even position on the left and the more erratic position on the right. It's kind of a nifty little stutter effect. By itself, I would not be using this on just a straight guitar sound like we just heard, but I can use it with a little bit of the delay and a little bit of reverb. Again, this is the halo and the immerse combo. So I'll go ahead and turn this off and I'll leave it in the most erratic position. But I just find that little bit of stutter, that little bit of motion and modulation just kind of helps make things a little bit more exciting for this part because it's a little washy and it needs a little help. Now I should mention that the sensitivity is going to set the point at which those interruptions start happening. So play around with that and be aware of what pickup you're using. I personally was using position 2 here, and I just really wanted to hear that effect most of the way through my playing. So I have the sensitivity set pretty high. But if you do it in such a way as turning it back, you can actually make it a bit more of a dynamic effect. I'll go ahead and demonstrate that real quick. So what we should find here is that by dialing back the sensitivity, I can lighten up my touch and that effect doesn't come in, so I can control it with my playing dynamics. Now usually when I make a Chase Bliss demo, I don't spend a whole lot of time with the dip switches. That's because I really want you guys to understand how powerful these things are just by messing with the knobs, and we've done a lot so far, but there are a couple of dip switches on here and some of the ramping things that you can do that I feel really make Clean a very fun pedal. Let's start with probably my favorite dip switch, and that is Dusty. Dusty is the mode that for a straight ahead rock player like me makes Clean a Swiss Army knife pedal, because what it does is it takes the limiter stage of Clean's serial compression and, as Chase Bliss describes it in the field guide, sets it loose. It essentially gives it this gnarly overdrive sound that is really, really sweet sounding and kind of makes the case for Clean being a good dirt box. Odd, isn't it? Well, let me show you how that sounds with this sample setting that they recommend that you start out with to get to know that sound. So all we have right now is just our run-of-the-mill Clean sound. we engage clean. I could go for hours with that because it's just so fun. It's so cool that it's not like a typical overdrive. It definitely has a character and a sound, and there's a little bit of that gritty compression thing, even though there's no compression really going on, but it's a whole lot of fun. But as we start incorporating some of the compression, you can hear how it affects the job that the compressor is doing. Let's go ahead and turn up the dynamics control. You can hear how the compressor starts to rein in what we play, and as it blooms out, we start to get some of that overdrive, almost coming in like a swell. Interesting, an auto swell overdrive state. But because that's applied to the compression, and I believe it's also applied to the... Is it applied to the dry signal? Your dry signal will be dusty as well. Oh boy. So let's mess around with dusty a little bit, come up with a cool little sound, and we'll incorporate some of the dry signal. Maybe to, if we say, shave off some low end, add a little bit of that body back into things. One of the other cool weird things that Clean can do is it can essentially be a volume swell, auto swell kind of effect. Now, normally that is a dynamically controlled effect, and quite frankly, I haven't found a setting where it really works for me. Instead, I prefer manual swell. You do that by depressing the SWELL AUX DIP switch on the top of the pedal. And essentially, that takes the aux foot switch on Clean and makes it the manual swelling effect. Then from there, you press and hold down on both foot switches and turn the dry and the wet knobs to set the swell in and the swell out time, respectively. From here, anytime you want that volume swell in and swell out effect to happen, you just press down on the aux foot switch. It kind of becomes like a momentary effect. The way that I have it set right now with the wet and the dry knobs as you see them is the least amount of swell in and swell out time. So essentially you have a foot controllable stutter effect if that's what you want to do. So you know what, let's have a little bit of fun with this one because it's a bit of an extreme effect. Let's slap on the Dirty Boy preamp for a little bit of grunge. And let's just boop boop bop as we see fit. Now, I've experimented with a lot of different ramping features on various Chase Bliss pedals over the years, and by far my favorite tends to be sweeping filters and doing it in a way that the modulation happens automatically. So here's what I've done. I've taken a little screwdriver or even the edge of your guitar pick, if you so choose, and I've depressed the EQ dip switch, the bounce dip switch, and the sweep from B to T. And essentially what that does is it takes the sweep of it from the current position of the knob to the topmost position on the control. Now, what I do here is just apply a little hefty compression setting and then use the sensitivity control now as the speed of the ramping. The bounce is key to this because when you use bounce, it goes back and forth between them. If you don't depress that, you're not gonna get that modulation and that motion. So let's take a listen to it without it. Turn it on. It's like having a compressed harmonic tremolo, which is kind of fun for me. If you want to make it slower, just turn the sensitivity control. And then we can add in a little bit of our dry signal in order to make it not such an extreme effect. Again, another instance where Clean is doing something it wasn't intended to do and seems to be able to do it just as well. This reminds me a lot of Condor because I was able to get a really awesome harmonic tremolo from Condor that just blew my socks off. This is doing exactly the same kind of thing. So if you had Condor and Clean on your board, imagine the possibilities. Now, is there anything else that you really need to know about Clean in order to take as much advantage of it as possible? No, I think we've covered pretty much everything. So now all that's left to do is give you a few more sample sounds and create some music with this. This is quite an incredible compressor and it can do some things that a compressor pedal should not do. It's kind of par for the course for Chase Bliss. So let's have some fun. And there you have it, friends. That is clean from Chase Bliss. This compressor, man, it's kind of like, I guess I could call it the Thermae of compressors, because to me, Thermae is a pedal that takes the analog delay concept and pushes it to its absolute extremes. Clean does exactly that for compression. It's all analog and it does everything that you would think a guitar compressor pedal should do. But it does it in a way that pushes it to the extremes and makes things just a little bit more fun. Now, when it comes to some of the sample settings that I've shown you throughout this video, I want you to keep something in mind. Compression works varied on your attack and the input into the compression engine. So a lot of these settings, if you go to try them on your own, you'll have to make adjustments to the sensitivity control in order for it to work with your guitar the way that it works with mine. But don't get discouraged, it's a very simple thing. Just take the time and you will be rewarded. Now I want to turn this over to all of you. What did you think about Clean? And is there something I didn't explore that you would like to see maybe in like a short or something like that? Whatever it is, you can let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, and I'll do my best to get back to as many of you as I possibly can. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, I would greatly appreciate your support. Please do give the video a thumbs up, share a link to it with a friend, and of course, click the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. You have no idea how much these little things add up over time and help this channel to grow. And hey, if you want to go a little bit deeper, I would really appreciate it if you use the affiliate links that I had in the description box down below. You can use them for everyday purchases like picks and strings, or if you want to save up to something a little bit bigger, you can use them however you see fit. And a small commission comes back to me so that I can keep the lights on here in the studio. I greatly appreciate you all joining me for this week's episode of Stomp Box Saturday. I'll see you in the next one. And until then, I wish you all great tone and happy stomping. Cheers, friends. God bless.